A reading from the Epistle to the Hebrews. Long ago, God spoke to our ancestors in many and various ways by the prophets, but in these last days He's spoken to us by a Son, whom He appointed heir of all things, through whom He also created the worlds. He is the reflection of God's glory and the exact imprint of God's very being, and He sustains all things by His powerful word. When He had made purification for sins, He sat down at the right hand of the Majesty on high, having become as much superior to angels as the name He has inherited is more excellent than theirs. Now God did not subject the coming world about which we are speaking to angels, but someone has testified somewhere, "What are human beings that you're mindful of them, or mortals that you care for them? You have made them for a little while lower than the angels. You have crowned them with glory and honor, subjecting all things under their feet. Now, in subjecting all things to them, God left nothing outside their control. As it is, we do not yet see everything in subjection to them, but we do see Jesus, who for a little while was made lower than the angels, now crowned with glory and honor because of the suffering of death, so that by the grace of God He might taste death for everyone. It was fitting that God, for whom and through whom all things exist, in bringing many children to glory, should make the pioneer of their salvation perfect through sufferings. For the one who sanctifies and those who are sanctified all have one Father. For this reason, Jesus is not ashamed to call them brothers and sisters, saying, "I'll proclaim your name to my brothers and sisters. In the midst of the congregation, I will praise you." The word of the Lord. Well, how many of you experience the fact that God does not work on our timetable? Everybody? Yeah, I have. There's no doubt that I've experienced that. And seeing my dear friends Julie and John Scott reminded me of that in Technicolor. In the years 1994 through 1995, 2 straight years, I was the bridesmaid at 5 searches for a rector across the Diocese of Texas. 5 in a row. Now, 1 or 2 is a little bit upsetting. 3 or 4 is daunting. 5 in a row is downright humiliating. And every time Kay and I had 3 children, we would, dress them up. We would march them out. We were just thinking all these churches would think we were just wonderful, and all said, "Thank you very much. We like the other guys better." I can remember, we interviewed everywhere from, of course, we had calls. We were in call processes in Austin, Houston, and had one very humiliating one in Galveston where they insisted we meet at the yacht club, and I thought my kids just looked beautiful. I had a son that was headed to the Naval Academy. Oh no, that would not do. And at that point we had a bishop called Claude Payne, who meant a great deal, I know, to Justin and to me and to Scott. A great bishop. And I saw him in Austin, and he said, "Now, Pat, don't say no yet." And that's always bad when a bishop says it to you. And this is 2 years of calls, 2 years of not knowing how I'm going to feed my family. And that's the truth. I had a son, going into college and everything else. And he said, "Don't say no yet." He said, "But there's some nice people in Beaumont who want to speak to you." And I said, "I'm not going to do it." I was a young fellow back then. I said, "I'm not going to do it." He says, "Now, Pat, just hold on. This isn't a regular call committee. This is the vestry." What he didn't tell me is the names of this vestry had to be pulled out of a hat. That's right. There's only, of several hundred people, only 86 people were left in the entire congregation, and everybody's name went on a piece of paper in a hat because the parish was so angry they couldn't even have an election. This is not a lie. So the 12 that were going to talk to me had been pulled out of a hat. And so we met them in Katy, Texas, and they said, it was really very meaningful for me. They said, "We just need somebody to come and love us. And to let you know how serious we are, we're going to pay you the league minimum. So taking a $75,000 cut in pay, I went to Beaumont. And it wasn't my timing, it was the Lord's timing, and I learned most everything I know about being the head of a congregation in that place. That's the truth. You know, you don't learn it when times are going well. You learn it when things are going down the tubes. And thank you, Julie and John, for reminding me of that. God does not work on our timetable, and he's not working on the timetable of these folks to whom this, it's not really an epistle. It really is it's sort of a sermon. It's written to a group of house churches in Rome before the year 70. We date it that way. We date a lot of things in the New Testament by virtue of whether or not the document makes reference to the destruction of the temple in Jerusalem. That would have been amongst this group, these are Jewish Christians, that would have been a monumental act, and it's not mentioned in this document, so we believe it's very early. So it's written early. Claudius, when Claudius was the emperor, he did a despicable thing, and he evicted all the Jews from Rome in the year 53. And so from 53 to 54, all the Jews were scapegoated and were expelled from Rome. There were quite a few there. That's how Paul, for instance, met Priscilla and Aquila, who were also tent makers. He met them in Corinth because they had been expelled from Rome. Later on, we think they go back to Rome. But they had been expelled. Now, the one who follows Claudius tells the Jews they can come back, but he's worse even than Claudius, and his name was Nero. And if you're very interested in the book of Revelation, I just gave Gail a new book on the book of Revelation. If you're interested in that book, it's most certainly centered on the reign of Nero and on the fear people had of not only his reign, the remnants of his reign, but also there was a fear that he would come back. I mean, that's how bad it was. So if you read Revelation that way, I think that's a more accurate way to get a hold of it. So anyway, somewhere in Claudius and Nero's reign, we have this document being written. And the people are complaining, these Jewish Christians are complaining that God has not lived up to their timetable. There was this fervent belief that the Lord Jesus Christ was coming back, and he hasn't. And this has a lot to do with Paul's letters, certainly 1st and 2nd Thessalonians. When Paul doesn't come back, when Jesus doesn't come back, you're thinking, okay, how do we live our life? And these Christians, many are threatening to go back into Judaism. Go back. Just like Israel, when they're delivered from bondage through Moses, they continually want to go back into bondage, where they kind of know the lay of the land. So there's always that compulsion amongst Christians to go back, right? When God does not meet our timetable. God knows exactly what he's doing. Ask Justin Lindstrom if God doesn't know what he's doing. Justin wanted a new call, and they didn't come on his timetable, but he got called here, which was the perfect call for him. And so it goes. There's some thought that Apollos wrote the book of Hebrews. It's a pretty good theory. Apollos was from Alexandria, the most educated city in the entire Hellenistic world. You know, when Alexander the Great conquered the known Mediterranean world and all the way up into India, he set apart he founded the city of, catchy name, Alexandria, and it became this font of learning, the largest library in the world. Apollos was from Alexandria, and he was very erudite. And in fact, if you read the Acts 18:24, you'll read about Apollos being extremely bright, eloquent, and competent in the scriptures. So perhaps Apollos wrote it. We don't know who wrote Hebrews, but maybe. Now, this is very interesting. The style of Hebrew, of the letter to the Hebrews, it's as if someone was writing you a letter today, but they decided to write it in Elizabethan English, in Shakespearean English. I mean, it is very stylized Greek, very extremely artistic. And so if you think it's tough to read in English, I can tell you in Greek, it is even richer in its contents. So, and it's in a midrashic style. So obviously whoever wrote it had a background in the Hebrew Scriptures. Remember, Apollos is said to have had great facility with the Hebrew Scriptures. And so it makes 100 allusions, 30 overt and 70 less so allusions to the Hebrew Scriptures. And so you're always going, it's in a midrashic style. So he'll trot out a Hebrew Scripture, and then he will do some exegesis on it with a deeper understanding of Jesus at its core. So there you go. There's your introduction to Hebrews in just a few moments. Now let's look at some of the questions I posed, knowing that probably none of you did your homework. We shall see. What emphatic historical claim does the author make at the beginning of this letter or sermon in verses 1 and 2? What emphatic claim does he make? That's right. In the past, Sally says, in the past, God has spoken to the prophets. But now he's speaking to us through a son, his son, right? Now, in everything in Hebrews, it will be the exaltation of the Son of God. Because when people are thinking about going back into Judaism, they're thinking about taking a subordinate route. Identify how the Son is described in the 7 consecutive clauses. How is the Son described in the 7 consecutive clauses? The first 2 are in 2b, and then the last 4 are found in verse 3. How is, just yell out some. How is he described? Heir of all things. What else? Reflection of God's glory. Creator of all that there is. What'd you say, Muriel? Exact imprint of the Father. Boy, that is so important. Exact imprint of the Father. You know, and this is big time, you know, in the first century's big time debate. You know, is Jesus God Jr., or is he really the complete reflection of God the Father, or as it says here, the imprint. He is the sustainer of the world. So not only is Jesus Christ, I have to say Christ here, Jesus Christ is not only the creator of all of the universe, he also sustains the universe by his word. He dies for purification for our sins, and now he sits at the right hand of God. Now this is exalted. Now think about it. The book of John is written in the year about 90 to 100. This is written about the year 55 or 60. This is way earlier than John, who comes out and says, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word, much earlier. It is a little bit more contemporaneous with Colossians 1, which makes some of these same claims. What bowl, let's see, where am I? To whom is the Son superior? This is the theme of much of this book, of the early part. Who's he superior to? He's superior to angels. This is more important than you think. Right now you think, that sounds kind of hokey. Well, what's the big deal? It has a lot more oomph than you think. Okay, second question, 2:5-9, the second chapter. In the Greek translation of Psalm 88, 4-6, the word mortals is actually son of man, meaning mortal or humanity. And to whom does the psalm referencing? What's it talking about? Well, when it talks about the Son of Man, it's talking about Jesus. But when it talks about just Son of Man, it's talking about you and me, okay? Human beings, women and men. You'll see this a lot in the Old Testament. If you look, for instance, at Ezekiel, when God will say, Son of Man, stand on your feet. That's always bad when God says that, by the way. But, It's even worse when he says, gird up your loins. But anyway, I don't know why God has to tell you to put your underwear on, but there you go. But did I just say God told me to put on the underwear? Yeah, no. Okay, so what bold claim does the author make about humanity in verse 8? What bold claim in verse 8 does God make about humanity? God put all things beneath humanity's feet, right? Sally, you did do your homework. Don did not make you watch all those crime shows last night. Instead, you were doing your homework. This is great. God put all things under humanity's feet. And just, if we look at that, Psalm 8 is extolling the fact that comes out in, Genesis 1:26 and 1:27, is that right? It says, man shall take care of the earth and till it and be fruitful and multiply. Our job was to take care of God's creation, take care of God's temple, which is his earth, okay? That's our job, except we decided to go in our own direction, didn't we? And so, no, we know better than God. We'll take the fruit off the tree. We'll do what we darn well please because we know better. And so we've made a mess of things. So how interesting, son of men, or son of women and men, however you want to say it, but we were given this to do. But then Jesus, who likes to call himself the Son of Man more than any other title, had to come in and redeem us so that we could fulfill our work, right? You cannot fulfill God's work. You and I cannot fulfill our work unless the Son of Man recreates us. Isn't that true? Can you say amen to that? That's true. And we can try all we want to. We can grit our teeth. We can try to do better the next day. We won't be able to do it. And so that's the portrait that the writer of Hebrews is setting up for us. How interesting that Jesus continually wanted to say, I am the human being. I'm a human being amongst human beings. But I've come to redeem all humanity. And so that you can do everything in the Bible reverts back to Genesis. Do you know that? Everything goes back to Genesis. And so that Jesus' coming, his crucifixion, his raising, all is so that we can fulfill our place that's been set out in Genesis. Okay, as I ramble on. Okay. How does, according to verse 9, how does Jesus accomplish this feat? By becoming a little lower than angels? How does he accomplish it? Becomes a man on earth, and what does this man on earth do? Yes, as Philippians 2 says, he became a human being and became obedient even unto death, even death on the cross. He is obedient, whereas we've been disobedient, right? We are disobedient. No, I want the fruit. No, this is the bad. No, I want the fruit. But he becomes the obedient Son of Man. Oh, I love this. It wasn't an angel who did that. It was a Son of Man, right? The Son of Man. All right, here I go. Okay. The image of bringing, and this is 2:10-12, the image of bringing many children is an allusion to Exodus. How does Jesus pioneer our salvation like a new Moses? That's a great question. I wonder what time of night I came up with that one. How does Jesus pioneer our faith like a new Moses? Where is Moses taking Israel? To where? To where, doctor? Aha, the doctor has spoken. The doctor has said to the promised land, right? So, okay. So the Lord, Moses is taking people to the promised land. And through Jesus, the promise is restored for humanity. Just as the people were promised that land, and Jesus, the promise that we would live in communion with God and we'd be able to live out our life. Yes, go ahead, doctor. Okay.
And he's sometimes above the angel and below the angels, and why the fixation on the angels?
Well, okay. Thank you for that. And this will kind of jump us ahead, but we probably need to jump ahead anyway. The most beguiling and the most destructive heresy the church ever deals with is Gnosticism. Okay? And in the Gnostic house, there are many rooms. But Gnosticism has several tenets which end up being extremely destructive for the Christian faith. One is it really emphasizes a dualism. When I say a dualism, I mean like Platonic dualism. There is a perfect order in the heavenly realm. There's an imperfect order at the ground level, okay? That's dualism. We often kind of feed into this dualism. We say things like, when I die, my soul's going to go to heaven. There's nothing in the Scripture that says your soul's going to go to heaven. The promise is our whole self in some way will be with God. We don't believe in dualism, but the Gnostics do. And so, and also the Gnostics believe very strongly in, there are some people that have superior knowledge. They have they have knowledge that's much closer to the heavenly realm. And there are those of us on the ground that just kind of make our way, kind of grovel around. There's so many other things about Gnosticism that we can go into, but in this regard, a lot of these people in these churches are suddenly beginning to hold up angels from the heavenly realm as kind of the vanguard of their faith. And this writer is saying, no way. That dualism will not work. And in this way, Hebrews brings us back to ground level. To be a Christian, to be fully a Christian, is to live a life on this earth fully and completely, and then to be restored to God as the person we are. Okay? It's not to escape, to be a Christian is not to escape this earthly reality, which the Gnostics like to profess. And so in that way, Hebrews is calling us to celebrate the fact that we're human beings. This is a pretty good gig. I mean, we humans are, made of the same stuff Jesus Christ is made out of. My goodness gracious, can you believe it? He comes into human form, right? And he lived his life in fidelity to the Father, as we should live our life in fidelity to the Father. Annie Dillard says this. If you take my class on the Common Rule, our class on the Common Rule, Annie Dillard says, how we live our days is how we live our life. How we live our hours or how we live our days. Now think about that for a minute. How we live our days or how we live our life. That's a very Christian thing to say. We don't have any time to waste. This is the life we've been given. And in this life, we emulate Jesus Christ, the pioneer of our faith. We don't escape the gravitational pull of earth. This is where we are, and these are the people we get to spend our life with, Okay, I hope that helps some, Doctor, but it all has to do with Gnosticism there. Now I'm going to go to question 3 in the dive deeper questions. At times we seem drawn to a more cosmic cure-all, Zeus-like Christ. However, the author of Hebrew tells us that such a Christ won't be much help to us. Why is that? Why is a Zeus-like Christ, that's throwing thunderbolts and making everything okay or whatever, why is he not much help to us? Can't have a personal relationship with a Zeus-like Christ, can you? Because he's not a person. Any other thing? Christ becomes a human being to heal us from the inside out. Did you know that? If there's no external thing going on here, Christ becomes a human being, And through his suffering and death, we're healed from the inside out. I think as Justin was reiterating from Matthew 15 some time ago, it's not what goes into us. It's not external to us that makes that's evil. It's what comes out of us. It's what, you think about. And so it's our insides that has to be healed. This is what has to be healed. And only Christ can do that because he becomes a human being. Gregory of Nazianzus, the 4th century Cappadocian father, that's up in the mountainous region of Turkey, Gregory of Nazianzus made this statement: whatever is assumed can't be healed. If God doesn't assume humanity, humanity cannot be healed. He's not throwing thunderbolts. He's healing us from the inside out. Is that right, Dr. Batters? Yes, please do.
Hold on one second.
He has a microphone, for goodness sake.
Oh, there you go. We should live our lives to be as close to look like Jesus. How can we look like Zeus? We don't even know what Zeus looks like. But we do know Jesus was a human being.
Yes.
He was the perfect image of a human being.
I started saying this to the congregations that I served when I was in Beaumont, and I'll just say it again since the Scots are here. It's not the goal of the Christian life. The goal is not to be saved. That's not the goal. The goal is to be made like Christ, the one who saves us. That's the goal. The only way to get there is to be saved, but it's not the goal. If that were the goal, it'd be all self-serving. But our goal, as Dr. Batter says, is to become like the one who saves us, a much taller order that, by the way, will take us the rest of our earthly lives. And, longer. Okay, that's enough. Where are my singers?